Okay, welcome to the Courage Coaching and Counseling Podcast. And today's guest is Priscilla Klockner. She is a child therapist, children's counselor here in Portland. And Priscilla and I went through school together. It took me 5 years to get through Western Seminary to get my counseling degree. And Priscilla, how long were you there at Western?
It took me 8 years.
8 years. So we were pretty much like Priscilla was my classmate, like for my whole
Yep.
whole time there, and we've had lots of classes together. Priscilla is the counselor that I send folks to if they ask for help with their kids. And so I'm excited to have her on today. Thank you, Priscilla, for being here.
Thank you for asking me, and that's super kind of you.
The even though I recommend everyone you to everyone, um, I am interested in learning more about counseling with children. It's I just took one like workshop on play therapy, so I'm glad. I want to pick your brain about it, but also want to uh, hear your recommendations for parents. And so this is going to be a great talk. But before we dive into the counseling piece, would love to hear a little bit more about your background for listeners.
Okay. Well, I'm a native Oregonian, born and raised right here in Portland, which I think might be a little rare these days. I grew up in a family with, I have a younger sister. My mom had a midterm miscarriage when I was 4, and it was a little brother.
Mm.
And I think that that had a pretty significant impact on me as a kid. But then year and a half later, my sister came along, and so it's just the two of us and my parents. And then my parents split up when I was 8th grade, I think, and then they divorced when I was 16. And
Mm.
finances were tight, and so that all, important times in my life made big impacts on me. I went to college, started out going to college anyway, and then because finances were tight, I quit and started work full time at the State Health Division, which is now called the Oregon Health Authority, but back then it was called the State Health Division. I did data entry, started out with HIV program and communicable and non-communicable diseases. And that's where I met my husband. And we got married, and I went back to school and finished my undergrad degree, which I have a BS in healthcare social work from Concordia College. And then we had our first kiddo a few years later, and and then let's see, I'm trying to remember. I thought that was probably it. I was going to be a stay-at-home mom. And when I think about the time we had 2 kids by this time, 4 and 2, and my pastor at my church said, "I think you should go sit in on a class at Western in the counseling department and see what you think." And I did. I went to Sandy Wilson's human sexuality class, and that was it. I was hooked, and I was like, "Okay." And so I decided to go to grad school, and my husband fully supported that. And because being home with my kids was super important to me, Western graciously let me do 1 class a semester, which was why it took me 8 years. And then when I graduated, I had 4 children.
Wow. So
Yeah,
you uh, you started the counseling program with 2
I
children,
started with
and so
2,
you
2 more.
you also had 2 more
Yes.
while going to grad school.
Yeah.
The your pastor's recommendation that you sat in on it. Were you doing some type of ministry in the church? at the time?
I think so. I think I was that this was a long time ago, but I think I was involved in family ministries
Mhm. Yeah,
and children's ministries. I can't
yeah,
remember timelines, but
yeah,
um, worked with youth.
yeah. What when you went to college the first time,
Mhm.
Priscilla, was your major social work or in healthcare?
That's what it was called, healthcare social work. So it was kind of healthcare administration and health half social work.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you finished that track. You didn't change because of your work experience. You knew you had an interest in that
I
field.
had already had an interest in social work, yes, and because I worked at the health division, I thought, "Hey, this would be great." And
Nice.
then, I after doing my practicums at Concordia, I decided social work was a little bit too broad for me, and I wanted to be more focused, and so that's why, probably why the Masters of Arts in Counseling was more appealing for graduate work.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about your like internship experience and how you decided to narrow things down to your specialty.
Um, I work you mean in undergrad?
In grad school.
Oh, in
How
grad
did
school,
you? Yeah.
right. I did my internship at, Open House Ministries. Sorry, I had to think about it for a minute there. Open House Ministries in Vancouver, and then also I did a secondary one at the Dougy Center. I
Um,
already knew I wanted to work with kids, so, anything that I could do. I also Western at the time that I graduated had started a youth and adolescent track, or a child and adolescent track, I guess maybe it's called,
mhm.
and, so I took all those classes too.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Could you share a little bit about the Dougie Center for listeners that aren't familiar with that?
The Dougy Center, it's called the Dougy Center for Grieving Children and Their Families, and it's a center for, kids who've lost a parent or sibling or some other main caregiver in their life. It's a peer support group, so it's not therapy, it's, peer support. They have, groups all the way from age 3, and now they've advanced it all the way up to, like, mid-30s, I think, um,
Mm,
for, kids, teens, young adults, who've either, lost a s family member like I said, a family member, like a sibling or a parent or other caregiver, either through accident, violent death, suicide, um, illness.
mm, yeah.
Yeah. And then in, I believe it was 2014 or 15, I can't remember, they started what's called Pathways, and I had the privilege of being hired by them for on contract to help get that going. That was very exciting, and Pathways is for families who are, dealing with an advanced serious illness. So
Oh,
the parent or sibling has not died yet, um, but their illness is significant enough that they could. Um, there's not a specific timeline, they don't say, you have to be in your last 6 weeks of life or anything like that.
mm,
But for people like maybe a parent has, ALS or, brain tumor, things like that.
mm,
And so it's nice because, I thought it was great, to have someplace where kids can go and families can go to just work through that anticipatory grief.
mm.
They're grieving because of what's happening and what's going to happen and all the things that will happen, but the death has not happened. And, so they've started that program.
Yeah. Wow. The and just with the pandemic and COVID and people's health, chronic health conditions. That's such a great resource. Thanks. I wasn't aware of that. Thanks for letting me know about
Yes,
that.
it's an advanced serious illness, for pathways.
Oh,
They have to be ill.
yeah. The uh, so you you did grad school for 8 years.
Mhm.
Uh, do you have any suggestions or advice for moms or dads, anyone wrestling with the idea of going back to school for to finish college, or going back to school to, uh, to grad school and get a master's degree?
I think you just have to know yourself. Like I said, for me, it was really important to be able to stay home with my kids as much as possible. Sometimes I think back and I think, I could have knocked it out in 3 years and um, and then I would have had all this time left with my kids, but I don't regret it, doing it the way I did it, because, when you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. And, and so that for me was important. So I think my advice is to just, know what you're okay with and what you're not okay with. And there's no right or wrong way to do it. I mean, there's no, you're not a bad parent if you decide to knock it out in 3 years. I mean, um, and you're not a superstar parent if you decide to take one class a semester for 8 years.
Mhm,
So,
mhm,
yeah, just to really think through those things and what you're okay with and what is important to you.
mhm. Nice. So I do talk therapy with adults. I do not know what well, I shouldn't say that. I've helped with case conference at the school for a little bit. So I've seen videotapes of sessions of therapists, students working with kids. Uh, but would love to hear your thoughts on what it's like to do counseling with children, and what ages do you see, and what do you see them for?
I see Well, I say 0 to young adult and parents. The 0, 1, 2, 3 age really is parenting. I not kids in my office by themselves, but, uh, I see kinda your typical anxiety, depression, stage of life issues, but I also, what's more kind of, I don't know, unique to me or more of my where I really like to land is, working with kids that are neurodiverse, whether that's on the autism spectrum or learning disabilities, or other, gifted kids, um,
Mm.
death and dying, and then high conflict divorce. Kind of really 3 very separate things.
Oh, yeah. So, uh, can you share a little bit about those different groups?
Like what in particular?
Yeah. So, um, for kids on the autism spectrum,
Uh-huh.
uh, when do you typically see that showing up? Like at what ages, and what do parents notice or struggle with um, before they see you?
Um, it's a spectrum. Um, and so I think it can show up various times. Um, just depending on where they land on the spectrum. Sometimes things are really obvious things are going on, and sometimes it's not so obvious until they're in school and having a hard time making friends, or they're you know, um just having meltdowns that are not what a parent would. typically think that their child should be having right now. And so that's so I don't know really how to answer your question
Oh, okay. Yeah.
about when exactly. I'm not an expert by any means on any of these. It's just where my interests lie. And I'm learning all the time.
Mm,
So when I work with kids on the spectrum, a lot of it's around, you know, being able to pick up on social cues and helping parents interact with their kids in a way that can be helpful to their child, like whether it's um, picture charts so the kiddo knows what to expect. That could make the day go a lot easier. Or, talking about transitions, transitioning from home to school, because transitions are often hard for
mm,
kids on the spectrum. Um, and then just, with the kids, like I said, the social stuff, reading social cues from their peers and how to um, maybe how to enter into a group of kids or just things that we kind of take for granted that,
mm,
how to, you send your child out to go play and they go play with their friends. But some kids need to learn how to do that a little bit more prescriptively.
mm. So you're really helping them a lot with social dynamics, relationships, making
Mhm.
friends, and
Yes.
interacting with others.
Yeah, and then how to also do things that, when kids get overwhelmed, and this is true for just kids in general, when they get overwhelmed and get dysregulated, how to things that we can do to come back, come back down, get grounded, um, take a breath, take a break, go do something that gets us out of that place.
Mhm. Yeah. The uh, when I work with adult clients, one of the things that they they share with me is maybe struggling with anger or their emotions when they were younger. Uh, if you if a listener is a parent and they're struggling with their child, or their child is struggling with managing their emotions, regulating their emotions. How can a parent tell if that's just them being immature and being a kid versus maybe it would be helpful to work with a counselor? Um,
I think it's I think if it's impacting your life in some way that you're kind of at your wit's end or you're just not sure how to do with this, I think it's always okay to work with a counselor. I don't think counselors are your last resort.
mm,
And I think that kind of getting that message out there that, we're here to help and learn a few new tools in your toolbox to put in your toolbox to put in your parenting know-how book. um, and just to help you along the way is a great way to get that message that uh, counseling isn't like always some big mental health crisis that is scary and we don't talk about. It's
mm,
you know we're there to help and and hopefully we can, and if we can't, hopefully we can refer.
mm. Yeah, I like that. It doesn't have to be awful or everything falling apart before asking a
Right.
counselor for help, especially with parenting
Yeah,
challenges.
and it doesn't have to be long, drawn out either. It kind of depends on where you are with your child and where you are as a parent, what you're wanting to get out of it. I mean, maybe, you just need some parenting advice and some parenting help and a different way to look at your child and a different way to try a few different things at home, and maybe that's all you need.
Mm,
And, you're good to go. And but maybe it's longer.
yeah. So, what has it been like to do counseling with children and families this last year? with the pandemic, with the shutdown?
It's been a challenge. It's been a huge learning curve for, I think, especially for child therapists, maybe. Not that it hasn't been for other therapists too, but adults and teens are a lot more willing to sit here and talk to you
Hmm.
than kids who are, you know, in my office. I employ a lot of um, child-centered approach where the child leads and I do a lot of reflecting and they have the run of the room. And over video, I have just found it a lot harder to do that. I still do. I can still implement that, but I have found that I've had to be more directive, which makes it, for me, I have to plan more.
Mm.
And I was not used to that. um, and then just also for me in particular, I'm, getting up there a little bit in that middle age range, and me and technology aren't the best of friends. And I have had to go to an EHR and electronic health records that I did not do before and
Oh. Hmm.
learn all about that. And, um, I've learned some cool things too. I have a virtual office that I have made sort of. It came, I bought the slides, so a lot of it came pre-done, and then I went through and picked things that I wanted to keep. And my oldest daughter is quite knowledgeable, so she helped me do a lot of getting things to where I wanted them on that. But I would have never known about a virtual office
Oh,
before.
yeah. Well, so what's a virtual office?
Well, it's like I can bring it up. So I share my screen and I bring up they're Google Slides, and I bring it up my office and I took a picture of my actual inside of my office because I wanted kids to be able to see what they were used to seeing, because this is where I do my work
Hmm.
in this room. And I took a picture of some of the things that I wanted in there, like my couch and some paintings and stuff like that. And then you can click on things. Oh, and there's a bit emoji of me sitting on the couch. And then you can click on things and it'll take you to a new screen with, so if we clicked on the basketball, for example, the hoop in the game room, we can go play basketball um, online type thing.
Oh, fun.
Or if we went into the yoga room and we clicked on one of the animals doing yoga, it would take us to a site where kids did yoga. And and I don't use that in place of therapy, but it just in addition, it's just one of my tools that I use. So, like, if, um like, with one of my clients once when they were, dysregulated, and we ended with doing some yoga together we clicked on the yoga and we did some yoga together, and, uh, it was pretty cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's that, that sounds more fun than talk therapy for with adults. Yeah. You're
And I would
playing
have never
basketball and yoga. Yeah.
Yeah, I would have never known about any of that had there not been a pandemic. And other resourceful child therapists across the country, because I belong to Facebook groups that are for play therapists, or people who do play therapy. Um, I'm not a registered play therapist, so I can't call myself that, but I do play therapy. Um, you know, it's they have been tremendously helpful and getting ideas, and somebody said, "Hey, I've done this," and other people were like, "Wow, how can we get that?" Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. We're all trying to just get through this together. So like learning and uh, learning from each other and sharing what we're learning. That's been a big part of the support online
Yeah.
with Facebook groups. It's really neat. Um, I'm curious, Priscilla, um, your recommendations or advice for families where their children are maybe struggling academically with like online school um, and
It's hard.
mhm, mhm,
Um, there, I, it's hard. I don't think this is just Priscilla's personal opinion. This is not expert advice or anything. I, everybody is kind of in the same boat a bit in
mm,
terms of, it hasn't been what it would have been in person. And even though some kids have pretty much quit, maybe they check in for their morning meeting and that's it. And other kids are still doing the work. I don't think I don't know. I don't think the vast majority of kids are going to be hugely behind. I mean, who are we comparing it to? The rest of the United States? I mean,
mm.
I, I don't know. Um, I think that so academically, I don't think they're going to be. I don't think we should worry as much as I think people are worrying about the academics.
The
Um,
academic piece. Yeah.
yeah. Social emotional, it's taken its toll. And
Hmm.
I've seen an uptick in anxiety I've with kids, just really struggling with not being able to play with their friends or just, you know, talking through a screen. It's not the same. And then you're stuck in your house and your parents are trying to work, so they're not always able to give you all the attention that you're needing.
Mm.
um, and so that's been difficult. Hmm. I think that can you ask me your question again? Sorry.
The what if a parent is concerned about their child, and you mentioned like the academic piece versus the social emotional um, uh, challenge. Uh, do you have any advice for a mom? For example, maybe their son um, is is just checked out, like is struggling to get up and log on,
Mhm,
or struggling uh, with mood, um,
mhm,
and finding it emotionally hard to
mhm,
focus and stay to stay online as much as they need to.
mhm.
Yeah.
I guess I would advise them to seek out help, seek out a therapist, somebody who can, talk with the kiddo and maybe get to get to those deeper emotions and feelings that are going on for them that they're not um, being able to express. Having that relationship with another adult that's not your mom and dad is important, or another person, but um, in terms of a therapist, it would be an adult. Um, that connection that, just every week that somebody can just focus on them,
Mm,
and where try to, figure out where they are. I think that could be huge.
mm,
And support for the parents, to help them interact with their child in a way that doesn't make it worse, um, and have a place for the parents to uh, express their concerns and their fears and their worries and everything like that. I'm such a each kid is unique. I don't have a blanket answer for you.
mhm, mhm.
That might be a cop out on my end, but um,
Oh no, I like that. Yeah, um there's no formula, like with our three. Yeah,
there's no formula.
what works for worked for one didn't necessarily work for the others. Um, and I think that's one of the ongoing challenges is we we figure out what works, um, and then with one, and then the other one, the next one comes along, and it's like the rules are different. Um,
Right.
and then now, like you said, we're all going through this. Now the world is different,
Right.
and school is different, and the way we do um, community. Um, because sometimes when we say the word community, it's like our church community, or, but school is a community. And when it
Mhm.
was taken away, that I realized, like, oh, it absolutely is a community. Band, or um, just uh, going to school and having recess and eating lunch, um, and like you said, interacting with people other than your parents,
Mhm.
interacting with different teachers throughout the day. Uh, that those social connections, the school community, it's been a big loss. And
It it has, and I don't think that people necessarily think about I don't think adults necessarily think about that they're grieving what they've lost or have grieved at different times throughout this past year, and I don't think that that in general, we think, kids are
mm,
grieving this loss too on a very, not necessarily, conscious level, but
mm,
bodily, they're grieving what even if they can't put words to it
mm,
always, that's a real possibility that they're, some of what they're dealing with is grief that's not been acknowledged.
mm, yeah. The I want to ask about children of high conflict divorce.
Mhm,
Yeah. The uh, as a couples counselor, I've seen more and more struggles with parents, with marriages. Um, can you share a little bit about your work with families, and children going through that?
um, I can share that for me, I am the children's counselor, which means I am not the parents' counselor.
Mm,
And sometimes when you have high conflict divorce, the parents want you to be their counselor too. And so you have to, as a therapist, you have to be able to hold pretty good boundaries with parents that want to just kind of bring you in to the conflict. And it is always my goal to keep the best interest of the kids in front of the parents. And,
mm,
that doesn't mean I don't work with the parents, I do. But things are a little different because they're divorced and because they're high conflict with the boundaries and stuff. And divorce in general, I say to one parent, I say to the other parent. There's no keep the triangulation down. There's no
you're not favoring
difference
one
or
or the
anything.
other.
Yeah. And so and just I try to impress upon them how important it is for their kid to at least be civil. Um and and we work on things like, it's okay that things are different at mom's house than dad's house. And but at the same time, I try to work with the parents that, where are the things that can be the same? So you're not making undue hardship for your child. Um, whether that's roughly a same routine or, um, the same kind of house rules, maybe not exactly, but,
Mm,
roughly mom and dad we both think that it's not okay for you to play, video games all night long
yeah, in the
type
same ballpark.
in
Yeah,
the same ballpark.
yeah.
Yeah.
I, uh, I do some coaching with parents and with children, and the inconsistency between the two households
Mhm.
is one of the hardest things with healthy behaviors, health habits, with healthy eating and
Yeah.
physical activity. But yeah,
And it
the
can be stressful for kids. I mean, it can put a lot on their shoulders, to just that inconsistency. And so I work with, the kids with about that, the stress, the anxiety, um, you know, in maybe indirectly how not for them to get pulled into mom and dad's stuff too, because
mm,
it's really mom and dad's stuff. It's not
yeah.
theirs to own.
Mm. Yeah, it's sad when uh, at a young age you can start to feel like you're responsible for
Mhm.
the conflict or conflict going better and fixing and solving problems
Right.
in the home. Yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't ask this earlier. It's kind of a shift, but I do want to ask it with kids that are struggling with anxiety or stress. What are some of the like the main things that are causing kids anxiety these days?
I think, uh, the amount of time they're online,
Mm,
honestly. I think that, um, it's our instant gratification culture. I think that, ramps up anxiety. I Right now, like you said, the pandemic and being, away from their peers, away from normal routine, the loneliness, um, um this is just Priscilla again, Priscilla's opinion here.
mhm,
I don't wanna speak for therapy community, but I don't know, our emphasis on, um, doing more and more, like, they play sports all year round. And the same sport. And,
mm,
and it's high competition, um, and that's kind of become the norm. And
Specializing in one sport and just
yeah,
doing as
and
good as you can.
being on the traveling team, not just the, rec team.
Mm,
And so there's a lot more pressure there for kids. I think we're teaching in school students earlier and earlier, you have to know how to read by the time you're in kindergarten. And
mm,
and if you don't know how to read, by the time you're in kindergarten, you know, you're already behind. and and then if you have a learning disability that's not recognized, you're probably going to get more behind. And it's just that pressure of we have to do more younger. Um, yeah,
mm,
a lot of testing. But again, that is my personal beliefs.
mm,
I'm a little leery to speak for the as a therapist on that part, just because I know that it's my focus and kind of my soapbox. So.
mm. Oh yeah, thank you. Yeah, um I have a lot of adult clients who, when we talk about when did uh, anxiety enter in, when did uh, your confidence uh, get taken away or drop, is definitely struggling in school academically, feeling behind, um, not feeling smart enough, not feeling good enough, and starting to compare themselves with other people. So
Mhm,
yeah, that's Um, but but I like what you said, just the pressure of just doing more, being
mhm.
really really busy,
Yes.
and the competitiveness. Um, that's tough. Um, yeah. The uh, so you're you, it's neat. You're helping uh, toddlers and and babies, and then all the way uh, up through school age.
Yeah. Um, so for the littlest ones, it's more unless something an event has happened in their life, like a death or something. It's usually more about attachment issues with their parents and building strong attachment. Um, yeah.
Mhm. The so uh, as we wind down our time together today, Priscilla, is there anything else that like you'd like to share to encourage listeners?
Mm. Um, oh gosh, that's pretty open-ended, Savon. um, um, hmm. Don't be afraid to reach out to a counselor if you think you need help or if you're just feeling stuck. Um, I have to, um, a great book to pick up and read. I think no, especially if your kids are in the younger and grade school age, is How to Talk So Kids Will Listen and Listen So Kids Will Talk.
Mm,
Um, it's good practice to be able to reflect back to your child to to reflect back their feeling um, and not necessarily tell them what to think or you know like, oh, you don't feel that way or don't say that. Instead, wow, that really bothered you. That kind of learning, that book is great for that. And I think that's very helpful uh, parent-child interaction to be able to do that. It's really helpful for a kid to feel heard and
mm,
understood by their parent before their parent, um, maybe offers a another way to do something or offers a different perspective. Um, to be heard is huge
mm,
because your parent doesn't have to agree with you. Your parent doesn't have to um, give in to what you want. But if
mhm,
you feel like they've actually heard you, that makes that connection so much stronger. Then you are able to hear them say, no, or say a different perspective um, than if they just shut you down.
yeah, yeah. And I like that you said it's for your kids. It's not just teenagers who have trouble like expressing what they think and feel. Like that can get hard even when your kids are young.
It can.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so learning those skills as soon as you can um,
Yeah.
is great.
And helping them build a feelings vocabulary so that, when they're young, so that when they're older, they have this recall, oh yeah, this is what I'm feeling. I'm irritated as opposed to just angry, or I am I'm grieving over this specific thing that I've lost instead of I'm just sad and not really understanding why.
Mm,
I think parents can really help build that kind of vocabulary along the way, and so as they become older, that teens can hopefully reach into themselves and pull those things out and be able to communicate with their parents.
yeah. Communicate with their parents and then their peers and eventually their coworkers and their partners. Um,
Yes.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Can I tell you a story?
Oh, absolutely.
I asked my daughter if this was okay to tell because
Okay.
it involves her, and she said yes. And actually, I told her about what it was about, and she said, "When did I get mad at you?" And, well, that's good. You don't remember, but um, when I think when you've got your child and you're doing your best. There's no perfect parent. I'm certainly not a perfect parent. My children can tell you that. um, but when you're doing your best and you're trying to give them the tools to be good communicators, and then give them the tools to understand what's going on in themselves, whether they're upset, or dysregulated or whatever, how, learning to understand themselves. You might get to a point where you're dropping your child off at college first year,
Mm,
and she has a learning disability, and advocacy has been important to me. I want her to be able to, advocate for herself. And it's been a long haul for me because um, the schools are just now beginning to actually recognize dyslexia as a learning disability, even though it's been in the federal guidelines forever. But
mm,
so, you might find yourself meeting with the I forget what he's called, the guy who does or gal, ours was a guy, who is in charge of like accommodations and things like that for students at the college. And you're wanting to advocate, and you want that college guy to understand, and um, you want your daughter to advocate for herself too. So you say things in the meeting, and then you say things afterwards to your daughter. You really should do this. Aren't you going to do this, or that just really bothered me, and you kind of maybe go on a little bit too long, and your child gets really upset at you, and um, and she was pretty annoyed at her dad and I because we did go on too long, and we did with her saying what we were hoping she would do, and she got kind of a little snotty, which my kids don't actually do that to their parents. So this was like, okay. Um, and so before we did our next activity, I was like, we need to talk. What's happening? And she was able to say to me, when you keep bringing it up and you go on and on and on, it feels like it's about you and not about me anymore.
mm,
And I was like, oh, you are right.
mm,
And on the mom hand, I was like, oh, I feel like, that big. On
mm.
the counselor hand, I was like, awesome kid, you just told your parent exactly how you felt. You weren't mean, you didn't yell at them.
Mm.
You stated what it made you feel like, and
That's totally appropriate
totally
and
appropriate.
brave.
Yes. And
Mm,
I think parents, as hard as that was to hear, and
mm,
it,
mhm.
kind of,
Of course, you love your daughter. You want what's best for her.
you're like, you're right. And so
Mm,
parents can say, you're right, without getting defensive.
mm,
What better relationship? And to me, that's kind of the goal, right? To be able to tell your parents how you feel, state your position, and still have that connection, and have your parents hear you and not get defensive and not tell you why you're wrong,
mm.
and accept that. And that's to me, that's like a, in the goal, a win.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. See, to have the security, the
Mhm.
the the, healthy connection, attachment, um,
Mhm.
to be able to share just honestly what you're thinking and feeling. It,
Yes.
it's great when you can those moments when you can have that. Yeah.
And I want that for my clients.
Mm. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Priscilla, for coming on and talking about yeah, the work that you do. Uh, what how can listeners learn more about you or connect with you?
I have a website. It's www.priscillaklockner.com. Um, that's Klockner with a K. And I'm in Northeast Portland, and my phone number is on there on the website too. You can email me or call.
Mhm. Yeah. And you're doing virtual, you're doing online. sessions so folks in Oregon could contact you?
Folks in Oregon, and I am actually probably technically hybrid right now. I have started back in person with just my youngest clients that online has been hard, and
Oh,
it would just be much better in person. So right now I'm just doing one family the day per day that I work in my office, and everybody else is still online.
neat. Okay.
I'm hoping that, with the advancement of the vaccine and kids going back to school, I'm going to wait to see what happens after they go back, kind of test the waters to see if COVID kind of stays where we are or not. But if it goes well, I would like to increase my in-person sessions. So I'm hoping by, you know, April, end of April, to have more kids come in.
Mhm. Yeah. So right around the time this episode airs, that might be happening. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. Great. All right. Thank you so much again, Priscilla, for coming on.
You.
It's been great
Thank-
talking with you.
Thanks, you too.